We are just about 6 weeks away from college football here on 2014, and everybody I talk to, just seemingly everybody, whether that's on Twitter, on Facebook, face-to-face, it seems to be there's one chic pick in this country, and that's the UCLA Bruins. They're building up. This program was down. Jim Mora took it over. He got them to the Pac-12 championship game a couple years ago, much improved last season again, and now they seem ready to be the team on the move in the Pac-12, and let's see if they can fight through Oregon and make it all the way to the national championship playoff. We bring in Vince Senick of Last Word on Sports to talk about the Bruins. Vince, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
All right, UCLA football, it all starts with a quarterback. They've got a really good one, a very athletic one in Brett Hundley. Your thoughts about Hundley? Maybe not the most polished guy out there, coming off 24 touchdowns, 9 picks, 11 rushing touchdowns. Your thoughts on whether he's ready to take this team to the next level?
Yeah, I think he is. He's a great mix of passing and rushing on the team. He's very accurate. You can tell on the field that the players respect him too in the huddle, and they seem to just really play well, especially when he's playing well, which is often.
Yeah, he stepped in as a freshman against Nebraska. I remember that second game of the season and really lit it up. They rang up almost 700 yards of offense against the Black Shirts at the Rose Bowl a couple of years ago, and it's been good things ever since. And in particular, I remember catching the Sun Bowl against Virginia Tech, the Bruins with a big blowout there. He rushed for like 160 yards in that game. Didn't throw the ball particularly well. I think that's something he needs to refine. He's not accurate enough to have gone into the NFL. They put the feelers out there about his NFL draft stock. He certainly would have gone pretty early, but at the same time still needs to refine his game, and we'll see if he can do that this season, because that could be the difference between maybe 10-2, 9-3, and possibly, again, getting to that national playoff. The offensive line brings back 4 starters, Simon Goins, Torian White, a couple names to remember up front. For a running back by committee situation, do you feel that Jim Mora wants to whittle that down to one main guy that he can rely on in the fourth quarter, or do you think he's good with the running back by committee?
You know, I think he would love to have just one running back that he can go to in the fourth quarter, but I don't think they're going to be able to get that. Could be Paul Perkins and Jordan James are the top 2 returning running backs. Brett Hundley was leading rusher last year for the Bruins, but Perkins is a bigger threat out of the backfield than Jordan James receiving-wise, so I actually think he's going to get the number 1 job, but Jordan James is also going to – I think they're going to split the carries 50-50 for the most part, and you're obviously going to have to factor in Miles Jack in that also, who led second on the team in rushing touchdowns last year behind Brett Hundley. So Jim Mora would love to have one running back, but I don't know if he's going to get that this year.
So, Vince, you brought up that name, Miles Jack. So this is a guy that was just very fun to watch last year. For the fringe football fan who just catches the highlights and maybe catches a UCLA game per year, of course, he gained his notoriety as a running back. When they needed a running back, they pulled him off the sideline, gave him the football, and it was like he'd been practicing and running the football for a 4-year college career. And he was just a freshman. Ran for like 10 or 11 touchdowns, just carrying guys on his back, just a natural runner. But the guy's actually an exceptional linebacker, probably will be an all Pac-12 selection this year. So there's kind of a debate among the UCLA community. Do you keep this guy at linebacker where he can excel? Because the negatives, in my mind, for playing him at running back is that you wear the guy out, number 1. Number 2, they rested him at times at linebacker because they were using him at running back. And so your side of the fence, where do you take this in regards to the use of Miles Jack?
He's an immensely talented player, both sides of the ball. I mean, he averaged 7 yards per carry last year. He had 7 touchdowns. But he is just completely dominant on the defensive side of the ball. You have to play him on strictly defense this year and maybe some goal line touches. He's probably already the best defensive player in the Pac-12, and if he's not, he will be by the end of the season. And you just can't risk him getting too tired or possibly getting hurt from running the ball and losing him on defense, because he's going to be a huge part of this team this year. Besides for Brett Hundley, he might be the most important player on this team. So I think you have to find just one spot for him, and I think it needs to be linebacker.
Yeah, and if he's not the best linebacker in the Pac-12, maybe his teammate Eric Hendricks is.
Yeah,
that probably could be the case. He's got over 100 tackles from last season, and he's an exceptional guy that really closes on the football. Great speed on this UCLA team. Anthony Barr lost. Jordan Zumwalt has moved on as well. So your thoughts about this UCLA team? We've seen the improvement year to year, and they win 10 football games, lose 3 last year, and pretty much stayed with the chalk in regards to who they were supposed to beat. Then they lost to Stanford. They lost to Oregon as well. They go 10-3. So your thoughts about it's been a progression that we've seen year to year, but is this team really ready to win a Pac-12 championship and possibly line up against an Alabama or an Ohio State in a national semifinal?
I think they are. I think they're going to improve win total yet again this year. They're going to have a top offense. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. They'll figure out the running back situation. Brett Hundley will help with that a lot with his rushing ability. And then their defensive side of the ball is they may have lost Barr and others, but they're still very good. Fabian Moreau and Ishmael Adams as corners, they're going to be the best duo in the Pac-12. Then we already talked about Miles Jack and Eric Hendricks. And there's a freshman linebacker in Zach Whitley, who will start with the team once. He's probably with the team now, actually. So I think they're ready to take the next step, win the Pac-12, and I think they're going to sneak in and get into that first college football playoff.
So, Vince, for those of us that remember back into the 90s, the Cade McNown teams were really good. They went to Rose Bowl games. Then there was just this gap of nothing for UCLA, just winning 4, 5, 6, 7 games a year, going to minor bowl games or missing postseason play. They just weren't very good, and I never understood it because they're in Southern California. They're UCLA. They've got a tradition. If you just get a decent coach, you would think you could bring recruits. You've got the recruits right there in California. You just need to keep them home. And you've got the weather. You've got the scenery. You've got the name brand. And they finally stumble upon Jim Moore. They finally get a guy that takes advantage of everything they've got there. Plus, he's got the NFL pedigree, and we've seen it in college football where guys with NFL experience seem to be maybe a step ahead of some of the other coaches. And Jim Moore has just done an outstanding job. We'll see what he takes it from here, but he's instilled a winning mindset, not complacency. That's been thrown to the wayside. The complacency of, we just show up and win 4 or 5 games, and that's okay. He's instilled a work ethic, a toughness that we don't associate with UCLA, with the powder blue jerseys. It's just not a UCLA thing. But this is a pretty tough football team. Your thoughts about Jim Moore and what he's been able to do there in Westwood?
Whew, man, Jim Moore, he really, going from Rick Neuheisel to Jim Moore is a complete turnaround. Like you said, he's instilled just winning attitude. They whenever with Neuheisel in previous years, everyone just seemed like lackadaisical. Like they'd come out, they'd go through the motions, and like you said, they'd be okay getting 4 or 5 wins. Now you see them coming out from the first snap, and they're firing off the ball, they're hustling, and then you can just see the difference in recruits too. They're bigger, they're faster, they're getting more 4-star recruits, and just having a former NFL coach is huge for the Bruins because the players, the recruits know he knows what it takes to get to the NFL, which is good for them, and he also knows how to coach, obviously. So he's huge.
Yeah, and the recruiting's been great all over the place. In particular, it seems as though I've noticed, especially in the secondary, I don't know where they're going to play all these guys because it seems like they've recruited 4-star guys all over the place at safety and cornerback the last couple of years under Jim Mora. Vince, let's look at the schedule. In the Pac-12 South, of course, the first name that comes to mind, of course, is USC. And even though UCLA seems to be the chic pick, let's not forget about the Trojans. They're very, very talented. Cody Kessler has a nice season this year. I could see them winning the South. Arizona State, I don't know what happened in the bowl game against Texas Tech. I thought that was a gimme practically against Texas Tech. I don't know what happened to that team because they were so tenacious and fast on defense all season and really showed up. It didn't surprise me that Stanford, being so technically sound, took care of them in the Pac-12 championship game. But it's a very tough division. Even Arizona is going to present some problems. Then if they advance, they've got the Pac-12 championship game, of course. But even inside the schedule, of course, they've got to deal with Oregon. So your thoughts about the schedule and where some of those landmines could be?
Well, there's no easy schedule in the Pac-12 this year, but UCLA did get very lucky. They have Oregon, USC, and Stanford all at the Rose Bowl. So not having to go and play in those hostile environments is going to be huge. I think the biggest road block, except for Oregon, obviously, is going to be at Washington. At Washington's always a tough place to play for anyone. Chris Peterson's, in my opinion, the best coach in the Pac-12. So he's going to have his guys ready. That'll be a primetime game. And especially if the Bruins are undefeated, they could be looking ahead to USC. I think that's a big track game right there at Washington.
I was just going to say, I should have done my homework here. I haven't looked at the UCLA schedule. Do they have any heavyweights on the non-conference slate?
They go in a neutral site game at Arlington Stadium against Texas in the third week. That's going to be a very nice showdown early in the season. But once again, they're lucky a little bit because Charlie Strong is still going to be new. Texas is still going to be learning him. So they're lucky they don't have him Texas later in the season, or they could be it's still going to be a challenge, but they could have been a bigger challenge later in the season.
Yep, that will be a challenge game. There's no question. Texas is.
And then starting the season at Virginia is going to be tough. Also, it's going to be 9 a.m.
Hopefully we didn't lose Vince there. Vince talking about the UCLA schedule this season with all the major games within the Pac-12 there at the Rose Bowl against Oregon and their Pac-South rivals in Arizona State and USC. We'll wait a second for Vince to come back and join us because we were about to wrap it up anyway. Vince Senick of Last Word on Sports talking about Jim Mora's UCLA Bruins. They seem to be the chic pick across the country to win the Pac-12 championship, steal it away from Stanford and Oregon, the dominant forces over the past few seasons in that conference, what many people believe to be the second best conference in college football. And there's a few out there that think the Pac-12 is number one. Are you back with us, Vince?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I lost the network.
Okay. No problem. I was just stealing time. I was just trying to kill time a little bit. So just talking about the Pac-12 and there's a brewing argument to a certain extent. The SEC is king, but that the Pac-12 could possibly, almost certainly is the second best conference, but possibly could challenge the SEC. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
The SEC is still the dominant conference in college football, but the Pac-12 is, I think it's as close as it's ever been to a conference overtaking the SEC. When you look, you have UCLA, USC, Oregon, Stanford, Arizona State, which are all, they could be top 20 teams this year. And then they could hang with Alabama, Auburn, LSU's, the Ole Misses. So they're as close as they've been. Maybe by the end of the year, they could overtake the SEC, but at the end of the season, it's still the SEC's world.
Yeah, you're probably right at this point until we see something play out differently. Even though Auburn lost it, there's no question that the ACC is not ready to challenge, despite the strength of Florida State. There's Clemson, and there's a huge drop-off after that. All right, Vince. Vince Senick, last word on sports. Is there anything out there that you're working on right now that we need to look out for?
Just keep an eye out on some training camp previews. We're going to be talking a little more in depth about those position battles at running back, at the middle linebacker, besides Eric Hendricks. And we'll also look at some breakout stars before training camp gets started on August 4th. So. All
right, Vince, we appreciate the time. Thanks for jumping on and talking some UCLA football. And like we said off the top, this is a program that people are keeping their eye on, expecting them to take another big leap. They seem to be the chic pick to possibly break up the Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State. What's expected by a lot of people to be the national playoff this first go-around that UCLA could sneak in there. All right, Vince, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate the information and the insight.
Thanks for having me, Mark.